What was your, wait, is this a cult moment? College friend invited me to a service at her new church. Later told me that the church met in a barn, and they spent their last service literally vomiting up their demons. 50 or so people holy vomiting all at once. Posted this elsewhere, but I went to my 20th reunion 5 years ago, and the woman who organized it I've known since 3rd grade. Very nice, smart, charismatic, etc. And she told me about her self-help life coaching company. I said that sounds cool and maybe I could benefit, so she said she would hook it up later. I live in LA and when I got back I had an email introducing me to her colleague whose email domain was isplosangels.com, which sounded weird. A quick trip to their webpage and a Google search and I find out she was trying to get me to join NXIVM, which is now all over the news. I noped right out of there, and glad I did as a bunch of them are going to jail now. Dang. This comment was a wake-up call that I've been using Reddit way too much for the past month. Because I knew where this comment was going in the first sentence. I read your response to the high school reunion AskReddit LOL. Therapeutic boarding school. The first night I got there, everyone told me how I'd get used to everything. And I did. I fell into their trap. I didn't realize how messed up it was until the school got shut down by the FBI and the owner got charged with child endangerment and molesting a student. Got invited to a business meeting for a life insurance company. My wife was looking for business connections, trying to get referrals to her company, so we went. It was an MLM life insurance company. It was such a creepy, culty place. Everyone with fake serial killer smiles, constantly talking about how much money they're making. The worst part was the other guests around us nodding their heads in agreement, taking in the bull's hook, line, and sinker. My wife and I just looked at each other, left, and stopped answering that guy's phone calls. We had actually signed up for some insurance through them when we thought it was a normal company. We immediately cancelled and signed up with a real, big name insurance company. My school's National Honor Society induction involved all of the inductees crowding in a dark room and chanting the National Honor Society pledge while holding lit candles. Holy crap, yes. And they make you say a Latin quote when you accept your award. My now ex-BF said he signed up for a professional and personal development course. I realized it was a cult when he came back with no personality and a whole new set of esoteric jargon. And any questions I had about it were rebuffed with, "Do you think it's a cult or something? You know Apple is considered a cult too." I find it interesting that most newer cults aren't really religious. The old doomsday, God's gonna getcha thing is a lot rarer. Now it's a bunch of self-help crap that doesn't even pretend to be about anything other than success. I can't tell if this is worse or better. I went to a small women's college in Virginia. I only stayed a semester because of the group mentality. They would constant rituals that were not mandatory, but you were weird if you didn't go. One alone wasn't weird, but collectively it was too much. Example, one Founders Day, everyone wore white. We went to the chapel for the ceremony and then walked 2 miles to the graveyard, where the founders were buried. We all had to lay roses on the graves and sing the school's song. 4 girls in my class tried to commit suicide in the first semester. My class only had 64 girls. If you discussed transferring, the dean of students and the school's counselor would threaten to have you put in a mental hospital for 72 hours. I transferred in secret so no one would find out. I didn't even tell my friends. I would wake up at 4 AM and transfer stuff from my dorm room to be shipped home. TLDR. Went to a women's college, and if you didn't conform, the dean of students would threaten to put you in a mental institution. I was looking into franchise businesses a while back and one place offered me the chance to buy in and become a business coach. They had me take aptitude tests, went over my work history and said that I'd be perfect with my business background. I went to meet them with a group of other potential franchisees at a presentation in a hotel common for almost all franchise businesses, and was like, WTF. This is an MLM. The other people there had next to no business experience, and all they were telling us was that we had to find our clients to coach, and then read them a script off on iPad app. What's scary is that they're an actual registered franchise business. I'm not going to say that the script they had didn't have useful things that actually could have helped a small business, mainly because I would have had to pony up around $100K just to see it. Every other franchise I spoke to and turned down, like a food or educational chain, was extremely polite and said best of luck to you. These guy just cut off all contact with me, and I heard later through my franchise broker that they were per my username. I used to work in hotels. We would have those MLM schemes rent our conference rooms all the time. Their attendees were the rudest people I ever encountered in the business. Have fun getting scammed, butthole. I think it's because that's the personality MLMs want. Those who already think they know everything can be won over by nothing but a little butt kissing. Had a pretty crappy sales position selling TV and internet and retail stores. It was impulse sales, meaning you're trying to get people to sign up for 2 years for something they just learned about 5 minutes ago. Anyways, there was a ton of rejection, but it was a full commission gig, so you stayed in the field till you closed. Therefore it required a shitload of effort and seemingly unending optimism confidence. Anyways, every morning you'd get fired up with cheers and chants and other activities that involved yelling and team building. This also resulted in there being 10,000 sayings recycled on the daily about sticking through it and taking control of your destiny, etc. Anyways, you buy into the system and the energy, and that's how they get you. One night I was driving home a co-worker, and you pay for your own gas, another sweet perk, and he finds an article, "Why Our Company is Like a Cult." And though he was laughing on the outside, this dude 100% brought it up to be like, "This crap is crazy, right?" Needless to say, the article was spot on, and he didn't last much longer. I quit soon after that. Dude, like 20 years ago I got this door-to-door sales position. I was like 19. That sounded like this. The start and end of every day was a weird cultish psych up chant and meeting. I didn't last long. It never felt right to me. When I was in middle school, a Jehovah's Witness family showed up. AMD enrolled their kids in public school. One of them, a fairly attractive boy, started flirting with me. I'd always been that weird girl in school, so I obviously fell for him. He told me he wasn't allowed to date, but he was allowed to invite people to his church, and if I went with him, we could hang out and it would be just like a date. I went with him, and that day they were talking about how if you join the church, you cannot speak with apostates or any of your family not in the witnesses. I knew enough about cults for that to be a biggest red flag. I was still interested in him, though. When he asked me to go again, I politely declined, because churchy stuff had never been my speed. Instead, I suggested we sneak out one night and meet. He did, and I used my allowance to get us tickets to some movie. I didn't see him for years after that. His family just vanished. The next time I saw him, it was in a mall. I went up and said hi, only for his grandmother to yank him away, snarling not to speak with that filthy W. Not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I think he was only allowed to flirt with me because they were trying to convert me and my family. In my community, we were pretty well known. My father was the fire chief, and in a small town like this, that's a big deal. I still wonder what happened to him, though. We were pretty well known. My father was the fire chief, and in a small town like this, that's a big deal. I still wonder what happened to him, though. He was assassinated for failing to succeed the arranged marriage between two well-known houses. I once went to my friend's Scentsy party. It was so uncomfortable. I hate scented candles and all that crap. I get headaches from a lot of fragrances and have a terrible sense of smell, so I'm not really the target market for Scentsy. Every woman at the party would oh and ah at each scent. I was pretty indifferent to all of them, and I really didn't want to spend $50 on a candle. But there was so much pressure that I just bought a wax warmer and got the heck out. Never again. Bonus: you can use those wax warmers to keep cheese warm. My parents were part of Amway. It is a pyramid scheme, of course, but it's also extremely religious. I would even classify it as its own denomination of Christianity. They used to have to-do meetings, in which they tried to rope friends and family and total strangers they met at work into doing Amway, too, which began and ended with prayer. Even if the people weren't religious or Christian, they would literally pray for money and wealth. Amway worked like a private country within America. It even had its own movies, music, and celebrities. You don't see all that from the outside. It's not until you're deep into it that you realize how hard they pound this crap into people. It's a miracle my parents decided to give it up. My doctor loved Amway and prescribed a few supplements from them, When the probiotic made me nauseous because of the grape flavor, she straight up told me that there isn't any flavoring when it's in the ingredients. She's also currently trying to make me give her $500 for my $90 C-collar insurance paid for. Joined a mom group when I was having my first child. It was a crunchy mom group. For those who don't know, a crunchy mom is kind of like a hipster mom. Mom groups can get pretty cult-like. I joined the group because of shared ideas. Bed sharing, extended breastfeeding, cloth diapering, stuff like that. Well, I gave up on cloth diapering and those moms went nuts. They staged an intervention with me and pretty much wouldn't let me leave until I put my kid in a cloth. And that's only some of the things. That sounds like a Simpsons episode, the one where the hipsters move in next door. Isagenix, and basically the one weekend of seminars my so and I had the chance to go to since it was hosted in Seattle. Yeah, Isagenix comes off as a little cultish. Went to high school orientation with my son. There was a presentation phase where electives and clubs got to talk and tell everyone what they were about. A group of really excited kids get up on stage and start talking about all the great places their club goes to and all of the competitions without ever saying anything about what they actually do. Before they get done talking, my son watches me pull my phone out and searches Deca occult. When typing is Deca, occult was the top recommend additional search. I don't think he is going to join. It's supposed to be a club where you learn business stuff or something like that, but it sounds like the one at my high school that was just an excuse to get away from parents and party. I was part of a Second Life roleplay sim years ago that was really dark and abusive, even though people swore it wasn't, and people kept going back even though they'd leave even more battered than they already were. Everyone was convinced it had once been a wonderful place and if they just tried a little, they could make it great again. No one ever succeeded, of course. After going back and leaving a few times, myself, I finally left for good. But something always bothered me that I could never explain. Why did everyone there feel like the city was theirs? Like they somehow owned a stake in the city? Like somehow the city had become a part of their very soul, even though it was just a stupid RP sim? Years later I was researching abuse psychology and found a list of cult traits. I was able to check off just about every single box. Goddamned place was run like a cult. Turns out most SLRP sims are. Frick that crap. Sounds like the Gurian stuff. Me 5 minutes in Deca. Basically non-stop work in Deca, or at least the school I'm at. Everyone basically worships that club class. If you aren't there, you were an outcast basically. It was treated as a secret society if you were part of it. It was really weird. When the people who I thought were my friends turned on me, resorting to threats of violence and rape and even death because I disagreed with them. Was an edgy teenager. Got bullied a lot. Didn't have someone to give me any wisdom. Turned to people who sympathized with me and looked out for me. Look, it called itself the Church of Creativity. That hardly sounds like a hate group's name. They constantly said that they were a peaceful religion and not a hate group. It was based on science and evolution, not hate, right? It was mostly just talking about movies or hunting or school with other kind white people. Except you were recommended to refuse to associate with muds. If the cashier at a store was black, you'd go to a different register. If the person serving you was Mexican, you'd eat somewhere else. It was constantly hammered in that the church didn't hate them, it pitted them. They didn't choose to be inferior, right? It's just nature. Sure, the founder of the organization built a compound where he trained young boys to survive after the apocalypse. But that's just about being a man, right? Totally not preparation for racial holy war. But thankfully, I broke away from those people when I was about 16. And then my only real friend in basic training was a black Buddhist. It kinda made me reconsider my views of people. I am not ashamed of my involvement in that organization. They used predatory tactics to bring in young men and slowly turned them toward hate. I walked away before I did something stupid. Being ashamed of it won't mean it didn't happen. So I might as well own up to it and make sure other people are aware that organizations like this exist. It wasn't until a few years ago that I actually realized how cultish their practices were. Parents, if your kids start talking about Ben Klassen, take away their computer. I can feel the downvotes already, but I have to share this. My friend told me it was a small singing concert. Went there, listened to 2 songs about Jesus, Watched a 30 minutes video of how Jesus sacrificed himself etc etc. Until this part it was okay I guess. Edit. Despite the fact that I wasn't even told the concert was religiously related. But then they turned off the lights. Hustled a huge 2 meters cross to the middle of the room. Light candles around it and started chanting "We are sinners." Then everyone started kneeling on the floor, and a guy was talking about redemption. At this point the people in the room were all sobbing and wailing. And then, the guy mentioned previously said this. I still remember the exact words: "If you believe of his existence, show yourself at the feet of the cross and submit yourself to him." And the people in the room got onto all fours, crawling towards the cross, all the while screaming and wailing and crying. I noped right out of the room. Jesus would have noped out of there with a serious eye twitch. This sounds completely insane, like an opening scene in a horror movie. I've been involved in a number of cults, both as a leader and a follower. You have more fun as a follower, but you make more money as a leader. I understood that reference. The Moonies. Two fairly attractive 20-something-year-old women just start chatting me up at the transit station. I knew something was fishy. They invited me for tea, then told me about the fellowship dinners they had, and some other euphemisms. After about 15 minutes of this I said, "So this is religion, right?" They said, "Up, yeah, etc." I said thanks for the tea but gotta go. Learned later they were from the Unification Church, aka the Moonies. My ex-GF did Landmark. I had researched and told her it seemed sort of culty. She ignored me and did it anyway, and as I was trying to be supportive, that was fine. I was super busy, but she told me it was really important to her that I come to her graduation at the end of the course. Again, trying to be supportive, I acquiesced and said I would go for her. About 5 minutes into the ceremony all the graduates were told to go to another room. I started to get uncomfortable, and the graduation was an excuse to bring all your friends to a landmark pitch while they abandoned you. I sat through that crap, and sat through the plants trying to be cool after asking me if I was going to sign up. Had to stick around cause we drove together. Felt lied to, violated, and emotionally abused, but the thing is, she didn't get it, or understand why I felt betrayed. That is the power of these kinds of things. People who don't get it are labeled negative and unsupportive. I couldn't have done more to be supportive except join their dumb cult, which I wasn't going to do. Things went downhill later. Should have seen the signs. We're still friends and she is doing well and is no longer involved with them, as far as I know. It wasn't me that realized it was a cult, but a work colleague I had to break the news to. She was a bright young thing at work, team manager, very self-entitled. But that's neither here nor there. She'd done some work courses and wanted to get reimbursed for them. I had to tell her that our company only recognized nationally accredited training courses and unfortunately the Church of Scientology did not fall under this umbrella. She was and went over my head. My boss turned her down too. So I'm a Christian for context, but had a friend who was a bit of a wacky over-the-top Christian. We were hanging out one day and he wanted us to hang with this new group he met that were trying to start a church up. I shrugged it off and said sure, figuring it would be cool. We meet at one of the people's houses and first impression they all seem chill. No big deal, just small talk. House was a bit hot though and it was in the middle of a southeastern summer in a humid state. One suggested we listen to some music and I didn't think much of it. Little did I realize, that wasn't as easy as it sounded. They started blaring Christian music very loud, and got up, started praying and lifting their hands, old Pentecostal style in their house. It only seemed to keep getting hotter. I was just hanging in the back, not really much for the stuff. This went on for a bit, then they said we should start a fire line. At that point was thinking of an escape route, but I was in the middle of nowhere and rode with my friend, so I was pretty stuck. I then found out the fire line was basically everyone would line up in 2 equal lines surrounding one person and they would all lay hands on someone and pray for them. I was uncomfortable as can be, but they encouraged me to do it, so I rolled with it thinking it would be no big deal. It went on for 2 hours. I was sweating horribly and didn't feel right as most of them started speaking in tongues around me. Finally it was my turn and I felt I was on fire at that point, and not in a good way. I thought I would make an excuse to step out after I was done. Yeah, I didn't make it to that. I passed out somehow in the middle of it. When I came to, 2 of my friends had dragged me out of there. Now for context, I was very healthy at the time and work a construction work, so I was used to heat. So I don't think that's why I passed out. So to this day I DK what happened to me, but I avoided that crowd after that, because that crap went on for probably 5 hours total. I know people have their different beliefs, and I'm cool with it, but it's the strangest and closest to what I could consider cultish thing I've been around. Large amounts of talking and singing in a confined hot space eats up the oxygen, causing people to black out and seizure. This is what speaking in tongues is to these people. Not the actual biblical speaking in tongues where you wake up randomly and speak another very real language fluently that you have had no influence in previously. Not necessarily a cult, but when my roommate and I first moved into our apartment, a group of people were hosting an ice cream social in the lot next door, so we went down to get free ice cream. They were really nice people, but then slowly started trying to convince us to join their church. We stayed and listened to their pitch cause. Free ice cream. Humans looking at fish biting hooks. Stupid animal. A little free food and it throws itself on your trap. My church, when they showed us this trippy butt video and we had this weird resurrection play, honestly freaked me the frick out. Also, my parents make me go to church. I'm not really into the whole thing. So, a couple summers ago, I did custom baling, as in hay bales, with a friend of mine. I mowed it, tedded it, baled it, stacked it, sold it, delivered it. I invited a couple of my friends to help and get to see what I do. They agreed. It was a small delivery. I think it was 150 small square bales to a gal who lived a few miles out of town. We were in the middle of unloading when her 7-year-old nephew came out and just walked around. He didn't seem to have any particular direction. He just watched us. His aunt, my client, came out and gave us some water to drink. I really love kids, so I attempted to strike up a conversation with this kid. He approaches me, and the woman audibly states, "Not too close." I couldn't tell if she was talking to me or the kid, but I just let it roll off my shoulder. She said there were going to be people over later, and that there would be food inside that we could grab on our way out. I expressed our appreciation and we finished unloading. We enter the house to grab the food, when all of these adults are standing in the living room, arms outstretched over a bunch of children laying on the ground, reciting a heavily modified version of the Lord's Prayer that includes the invocation of Lucifer and whatnot. I don't know how that works, but I looked at both of my friends and just mouthed the words go 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 go. We stole a crap ton of food that day and almost shat our pants. Check cleared for the hay though, so that's good. I just don't want to know where the money came from. The Penn State sex abuse scandal with Jerry Snadowski. Frick your little kids, we want another national championship please. Plus the overinflated egos of most Penn Staters. We get it. You go to Penn State and crap on everybody else with no real reason to do so. Got some friends that go there that aren't like this, but dang, your IQ isn't that much higher than mine. If it is at all, Penn State isn't MIT on an academic scale, nor is it Alabama on a football scale. That place is a cult. Frick your little kids was definitely their goal. Oh, I have one. When a new group of friends bomb you and insist on doing group activities together almost every other day and every weekend, and things are going so swell and fun until you express a difference in opinion here and there about trivial things, and the leader of this group gets really mad and has a serious discussion with you on how you need to change yourself to remain in the group. And almost everyone in this group is in their late 20s, early 30s. It was such a bizarre year in my life. I can't remember doing anything important or productive during that time. My memories just blur from first meeting them and being instantly liked to being told to change or else. I felt so relieved and calm and free after ghosting them. I remember wondering if I had accidentally joined a cult or if I had time traveled back to high school. I showed up to my college crush's house for our second date and walked into a room of every single relative they had sitting in a circle waiting to greet me. They then took me on their planned date. Since I planned the first, they took me to eat, then to church where I listened to the most intense audio experience of my life. I even heard the wall sound nitrous oxide makes coming through the speakers. Within minutes it felt like I was tripping on acid, like the way the carpet rolls or walls breathe. I hadn't done any drugs in 3 years. I started to question life and my path. I was surrounded by the symbolism of Jesus. Then I realized they brought me here on purpose. We were only stopping in, Thea said. I lifted my head and they told the group we had to go. They got on their knees and asked if I was okay. I wasn't. I said they can't force religion on me. I asked why I felt on drugs. Thea said maybe it's brainwashing. For 6 months I researched till finding Timothy Leary's autobiography and his book The Psychedelic Reader. In it the topic of induced psychosis, i.e. tripping, can be used to cause change in people. The entire audio experience is described in great detail as it was produced for the deliberate purpose of mental health brainwashing. For those that don't know, Leary was responsible for Gov-funded brainwashing experiments using LSD in prisons and was successful. So successful he took it public and used them to change lives. Years later the Assembly of God Church began using these methods to induce psychosis and then dangle truth of Jesus over their victims' heads. In psychosis the mind's filters are broken down. The filter is rebuilt around what the mind finds true. If that truth is Jesus, you are likely going to become Christian on the spot. I didn't because I recognized the experience to feeling like I was on LSD. I wasn't. But the sounds they used were derived from it. And as Leary says in his book, so effective they would take sober types in and have to carry them out. I asked them, if I don't join your church, are you still going to see me? They never spoke to me again. Rhythmia Life Advancement Center, aka the Ayahuasca Retreat. It sounds cool on paper, till you see them all in creepy all white linen outfits, drugged out of their minds in twin-sized bed, convinced one man has the ability to bring them to full enlightenment. Not to mention their heavy YouTube recruitment campaign. Yikes. I was the worst kind of Naruto fan growing up. The worst. And I had an outlet on the internet. At 13 years old I started a chat room for other Naruto fans, specifically centered around Jashinism. For those of you who never went through a Naruto phase, Jashinism is a fake religion, based on an idea of voodoo, centered around slaughter. The Akatsuki character Hidden uses this as his main form of attack, and is a bit of a pious zealot. As an edgy 13-year-old with no sense of social boundaries, of course this drew my attention. I wanted to share it with the world, so I made a fake prayer, and some fake commandments, and centered my take on Jashinism around the balance of life and death, and understanding pain, as much as a traumatized 13-year-old can. Well, it gained traction, like, a lot of traction. People made a website, they started asking me for spiritual advice, wanted to donate money, wanted to build an actual church. Well, it started to get kind of scary, so I noped out. I backed way off and pretended it never happened. I can't find the website anymore, so I'm pretty sure it got taken down by whoever made it. Anyway, I was thinking about that chat room after I'd grown up and gone to therapy. I realized I kind of started a cult centered around a Naruto-based fictional religion. Whoops, never promoted the idea of hurting yourself or others though. Made it very clear I wasn't about that. But people got really into the idea of understanding pain and being understood. Having that comfort, I guess. I really didn't think anyone would think it was real, but it happened. TLDR. I got really into Naruto and accidentally started a cult. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.